You don't expect a case like this to exist, because usually in any investigation, there's at least one person telling the truth. Someone slips, someone talks, someone breaks. But in this case, that never happened. Every single person connected to the victim had a story, and every single story was a lie. Not partially wrong and not slightly misleading, completely false. And the deeper investigators went, the more it felt like the truth wasn't just hidden, it was being protected. If you're into real cases that slowly unfold and make you question everything, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Because on The Dark Brief, we don't just tell stories, we reveal what people tried their hardest to hide. It started with a quiet night and a call that didn't seem unusual at first. A man was found dead inside his own house. There were no clear signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle that pointed to a chaotic break-in, and nothing of real value appeared to be missing. At first glance, it looked like something that could be explained quickly, maybe a robbery that went wrong or an unexpected confrontation, but almost immediately, something felt off. The scene didn't match the outcome. It felt staged, controlled, like someone wanted it to look like something it wasn't. The victim himself didn't fit the profile either. He had no known enemies, no violent past, and no obvious reason for someone to target him. People who knew him described him as normal, quiet, and careful, the kind of person who avoided trouble, which made his death even harder to understand. Because when someone like that becomes the center of a violent case, it usually means the motive isn't random, it's personal. The first person investigators spoke to was his wife. She claimed she had been asleep the entire time. According to her, she didn't hear anything, no movement, no avaz, nothing that would suggest something violent had happened just rooms away. But that didn't line up with what investigators were seeing. Based on the condition of the scene, it was almost impossible that everything happened in complete silence. There had to be noise. There had to be some kind of disturbance. But she stayed firm, calm, consistent, at least at first. Then came the neighbor. He said he saw someone leaving the house late that night, a figure in the dark, moving away from the property. But when investigators asked for details, his story began to shift. At one point, he said the person was running. Later, he changed it to walking. Then he hesitated when asked about height, build, even gender. It became clear that either he hadn't seen anything at all, or he was carefully adjusting his story to avoid saying too much. The victim's best friend was next. He told investigators that he hadn't spoken to the victim in days, maybe even longer. He tried to create distance between himself and the situation. But phone records told a different story. The two had been in contact multiple times just hours before the incident. When confronted with this, he didn't panic. He simply adjusted his version of events, said it wasn't important, said it didn't matter. But investigators knew something crucial at that moment. People only lie about small, provable details when they're trying to hide something much bigger. As more people were questioned, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Co-workers gave timelines that didn't match. Friends avoided direct answers. Small details kept changing depending on who was being asked. It wasn't just inconsistency, it was coordinated confusion. And that's when the investigation shifted. This was no longer about finding one suspect. This was about understanding why so many people were refusing to tell the truth. The breakthrough didn't come from a confession. It came from financial records, hidden transactions, unexplained transfers, money moving quietly between people who all claimed they had nothing to do with each other. The victim was connected to it. So was his friend, and eventually, even his wife. When confronted, all of them denied any knowledge, but the evidence was solid, and now, for the first time, there was a possible motive. The victim had discovered something involving money, something that wasn't supposed to be exposed, and once he knew, he became a risk, not to one person, but to multiple people at once. And that changed everything, because now the idea of a single attacker didn't make sense anymore. This looked like a situation where more than one person had something to lose. As pressure increased, the wife changed her story. She admitted she hadn't been asleep the entire time. She said she had heard something, but was too afraid to leave her room. That shift alone was critical. It meant she had been awake, aware, and possibly much closer to what happened than she originally claimed. But even then she stopped short of telling the full truth. Then came a mistake from the best friend. During one of the interviews, he mentioned a specific detail about the scene, something that had never been released publicly. Investigators immediately noticed it. When asked how he knew, he tried to backtrack, but the damage was already done. It was a clear sign that he knew more than he should. And still, he didn't confess. At this point, investigators realized something chilling. These weren't people panicking under pressure. They weren't making random mistakes. They were choosing to lie, repeatedly, even when the truth was starting to close in around them. It was controlled, intentional, and that meant one thing. They were protecting something bigger than themselves. So the strategy changed. Instead of focusing on evidence alone, investigators focused on breaking the group dynamic. They separated everyone completely. No shared timelines, no chance to align stories. Each person was questioned in isolation, with different details, different angles, and increasing pressure. And slowly, the cracks began to appear. Not full confessions, not clear admissions, just small fractures in their stories. One detail here, another contradiction there. But when those pieces were put together, they told a story far more disturbing than anyone expected. The victim wasn't killed in a moment of panic. It wasn't spontaneous. It was discussed, considered, and eventually decided. He had become a problem that couldn't be ignored. And instead of one person acting alone, multiple people allowed it to happen. Some planned, some assisted, some simply chose not to stop it. And after it was done, they all made the same decision. Lie. Lie to investigators, lie to each other, and most importantly, lie to themselves, because telling the truth would mean accepting what they had become. Eventually, one person gave just enough information to confirm the overall picture. Not everything, but enough. Enough for investigators to connect the timeline, establish the roles, and understand the motive. Arrests followed. Charges were filed. The case, at least on paper, was solved. But even in court, the lies didn't fully stop. Some denied everything until the end. Some stayed silent. And some told versions of the truth, carefully edited to protect themselves. Because sometimes the truth isn't just something you hide from others, it's something you can't face yourself, and that's what makes this case different. Not just the crime, but the collective decision to bury the truth so deeply that it almost disappeared. So here's something to think about. If you were in a situation where telling the truth could destroy your life, would you still say it? Or would you convince yourself that lying is the only way out? Let me know in the comments what you think. I read every single one. And if this story made you think differently about how far people can go to protect themselves, share it with someone who would be just as shocked. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing in this case wasn't the crime itself. It was how many people were willing to lie about it.